King David called himself a worm in Psalm 22, and that single word predicted exactly how Jesus would die, 1,000 years before crucifixion existed. Psalm 22 opens with, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Jesus Christ spoke these exact words from the cross, but King David wrote this psalm around 1000 BC, a full millennium before Jesus was born. Crucifixion didn't exist when David wrote this. The Persians would develop it centuries later. The Romans would perfect it. But in 1000 BC, no one had seen it. Yet Psalm 22 describes crucifixion with surgical precision. Verse 16, "They pierced my hands and my feet." Verse 17, "I can count all my bones." Verse 18, "They divide my garments among them and cast lots for my clothing." Every detail matches the gospel accounts. Roman soldiers at the cross divided Jesus' clothes and cast lots for his seamless tunic, exactly as Psalm 22 predicted. But verse 6 contains something stranger. David writes, "I am a worm and not a man." Not a lion, not a serpent, a worm. The Hebrew word is Tolah, the crimson worm. And that specific word unlocks everything. The Hebrew word is Tolah, the crimson worm, Coccus ilicis. This creature has one of the most sacrificial life cycles in nature. When the female crimson worm is ready to give birth, she climbs onto wood and attaches herself so firmly she can never leave. She lays her eggs beneath her body, using herself as shelter. Then her body produces a crimson dye. As she dies, this red secretion covers her babies, staining them red. The scarlet fluid protects the larvae and provides their first nourishment. The mother dissolves into a crimson stain, giving everything so her children can live. 3 days after death, the crimson stain turns white wax. The wood underneath becomes completely clean. This was the source of scarlet dye in ancient Israel, the dye used in the tabernacle, the scarlet thread in Jericho, the high priest's Day of Atonement ceremony. But here's the detail that stopped me cold. The word Tolah appears only 6 times in the entire Old Testament, and every single time it's connected to blood sacrifice. The crimson worm attaches to wood. Jesus was nailed to wood. The worm's body produces scarlet through death. Jesus' body produced scarlet blood through death. The worm gives life through sacrifice. Jesus gave his life so we could live. The worm turns white after 3 days. Jesus rose after 3 days. Isaiah 1:18. "Though your sins are like scarlet, they shall be as white as snow." Same word, the crimson worm. Psalm 22 contains medical details about crucifixion that forensic pathologists confirm today. Verse 16, "They pierced my hands and my feet." Crucifixion's defining feature, written before crucifixion existed. Verse 17, "I can count all my bones." People stare and gaze at me. Medical studies confirm crucifixion stretches the body, making every bone visible. The skeletal structure becomes exposed. Verse 18, "They divide my garments among them and cast lots for my clothing." John 19:23-24. Records Roman soldiers doing exactly this, dividing Jesus' garments and casting lots for his seamless tunic. Verse 14-15. "I am poured out like water, and all my bones are out of joint. My heart is like wax, it has melted within me. My strength is dried up like a potsherd, and my tongue sticks to the roof of my mouth." Medical precision. Shoulders dislocate during crucifixion. Extreme dehydration. Cardiac stress so severe the heart can rupture, which is why blood and water poured from Jesus' side when pierced. The water was pericardial fluid from a ruptured heart. David is describing pathology that wouldn't be clinically understood for 3,000 years. Verse 1, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Jesus spoke these exact words from the cross. Matthew 27:46 and Mark 15:34 record it. Jesus was pointing people back to this psalm, declaring, "This was written about me." The psalm doesn't end in death. Verse 22, onward shifts to triumph. I will declare your name to my people. All the ends of the earth will remember and turn to the Lord. Future generations will be told about the Lord. Death, then resurrection. Suffering, then victory. The worm dies on the wood, but life comes from that death. This isn't just prediction. This is divine authorship. A text written 1,000 years before the event contains specific, verifiable details about an execution method that didn't exist, using biological imagery from a creature whose life cycle perfectly mirrors the theological reality. The mathematical probability. David randomly describes crucifixion details, garment division, specific physical suffering, the exact cry from the cross, death on wood, and uses a crimson worm metaphor that parallels the entire gospel. All of this aligning perfectly with Jesus Christ? That's not coincidence. That's design. The worm imagery reveals something profound about the incarnation. Jesus didn't just die as a man. He made himself nothing, taking the very nature of a servant, as Paul writes in Philippians 2. A worm is the lowest creature. It crawls in dirt. It's crushed underfoot. When David says, "I am a worm and not a man," pointing prophetically to Jesus, we're seeing the ultimate descent. The God who created galaxies becomes a worm. The King of Kings becomes the lowest of the low. Why? The crimson worm shows us. That's the only way to produce the scarlet covering that saves. That's the only way to offer complete sacrifice. That's the only way to attach yourself to the wood and give everything so others can live. The worm doesn't negotiate or keep an escape route. It commits fully to the wood, knowing death is coming. Jesus did the same. He set his face toward Jerusalem. He told Peter to put away his sword. He said to Pilate, "You would have no power over me if it were not given to you from above." He could have called angels, but didn't. He attached himself to the wood. On that wood, he produced the scarlet covering that cleanses sin. Not with the blood of bulls and goats, but with his own blood. The crimson worm's dye was used in Old Testament sacrifices as a shadow. Jesus' blood is the reality. Something about this story grabbed you. Maybe you grew up in church and walked away. Maybe you've been successful by every worldly metric, career, finances, respect. But something's hollow. Maybe you're watching the world fall apart and wondering if any of this matters. The Crimson Worm prophecy means 3 things for you today. First, there's a design. We live in an age that claims everything is random. Evolution is random. Your existence is random. Morality is random. But Psalm 22 is a thread proving there's a weaver. Someone wrote the script before the actors took the stage. If there's design in history, there's design in your life. The chaos you see isn't the full picture. Second, sacrifice is real and meaningful. Our culture preaches self-preservation. Maximize comfort. Protect boundaries. Look out for number 1. But the crimson worm and the Christ, it points to show something different. The highest form of life comes through death. The worm dies so offspring live. Jesus dies so we live. He calls us to the same pattern. Take up your cross daily. Lose your life to find it. You're in the prime of life, 45 to 65, and you've accumulated things. Career achievements, maybe a retirement account, a reputation. You're watching a culture abandon everything you built your life on. Traditional values mocked, economic instability, international chaos, border issues, political division. Institutions you trusted are crumbling. The Crimson Worm prophecy says, attachment to the wood is the only path to life. Not attachment to America, though we love our country. Not political parties. Not portfolios and property. Attachment to the cross. The wood where Jesus died. Everything else can be taken. Your 401k can crash. Your health can fail. Your reputation can be destroyed by one viral video. Political winds shift. But what happened on that wood 2,000 years ago, prophesied 1,000 years before that, cannot be undone. The crimson stain was made. The payment was completed. The resurrection proved it worked. Third, Transformation is possible. The crimson worm turns white after 3 days. Jesus rose after 3 days. His promise is that he can take your scarlet sins and make them white as snow. It doesn't matter what you've done. David was an adulterer and murderer. Peter denied Jesus. Paul killed Christians. The thief on the cross was being executed for his crimes. All of them were covered by the crimson worm's blood. You're not too far gone. You're not too old. You haven't wasted too much time. The scarlet can still turn white. Finally, there's a legacy beyond you. The worm dies, but the offspring live. You're in the stage of life where legacy matters. What will you leave behind? Will your kids follow your path? Will your life have mattered? If you attach yourself to the wood, if you commit fully to Christ without escape routes or backups, your life produces something that outlasts you. Psalm 22 ends. Future generations will be told about the Lord. They will proclaim his righteousness to a people yet unborn. That's legacy, not your name on a building, not money in a trust. Spiritual offspring who come to life because you were willing to die to yourself and point them to the crimson worm who died for them. Psalm 22, verse 6. I am a worm and not a man. A prophecy written in 1000 BC, fulfilled in 33 AD, verified by biology, archaeology, and history, and still offering life to anyone who will look at the wood and believe. The worm prophesied. The prophecy was fulfilled. And the question is, will you let the crimson covering reach you?